figure out ultimately what is.
It's still a mystery as to why it took them. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is having a great week so far. Thanks for tuning in to Primetime Crime Live. I'm Lauren Conlin, and as always, I have my lovely co-host, Jarrett Ferrantino. Hi, Jarrett.
Good evening. You had me working right up to the bell tonight. We have some breaking news, and we're trying to digest everything, so it's crazy. How are you, Lauren? It's good to see you. Hello, everyone.
I know. It's so good to see you. I'm thrilled to see you, and I'm thrilled. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm anxious to go over everything because there's a lot going on today. I mean, there was the Robert Tell's verdict, and I'm not really following that trial like a lot of other people were, but I mean, he was found guilty, and then Wade Wilson yesterday was sentenced to death, which was kind of necessary, I think. And then today we've got huge news out of Boston with Sandra Birchmore, with Matthew Farwell getting arrested finally after a very long time.
And this is a case, so you introduced me to the Birchmore case, and we reviewed it and did an episode on it a couple of weeks ago. And we're talking about, just to recap, Sandra Birchmore was a very young woman. She became enrolled in a program with the police department, meets Matthew Farwell and his brother, and becomes involved in a sexual relationship with him. Her death was originally ruled a suicide. Matthew Farwell was seen leaving her home her apartment at that point. It was ruled, a pathologist said, this looks like a suicide. Dr. Michael Bodden, at the request of Sandra Birchmore's family, re-examined her death, her body, her autopsy, and confirmed and changed the ruling and said, look, this is a homicide due to the impact on the highway bone, which we talked about. Now, Dr. Smock, at the request of the police, has re-reviewed the autopsy, confirmed it was a homicide, and today, a 45-page affidavit of probable cause in support of an indictment, federal charges, Matthew Farwell charged in the murder, killing of Sandra Birchmore. And it all begins with an illicit sexual relationship that began when she was 15 years old, confirmed from the grave by the texts of Sandra Birchmore. Every piece that we thought and knew was missing, Lauren, has come together in that affidavit.
Oh, I literally just finished reading it as I sat down, and it made me obviously incredibly sad, but this guy got married and took her virginity when she's literally, it says that Sandra's like, yeah, we can do it after school. After school? She's a child. I mean, everything about this just literally made me sick to my stomach. People on Twitter were like, you have to have a strong stomach, get ready. And I was like, really? Are they really?
Well, you do. I think that people have to realize we're talking about a sexual relationship between a 27-year-old man, 6'5". In the affidavit, it breaks down their height, which pull that up because I think, and I've done this in court, I often would take the height differential and weight differential between a defendant and a victim just to show that power dynamic, because really it speaks volumes. So here are a couple of things. Sandra Birchmore, at a very early age, was talking about adult things, while Farwell was talking like a child. He's talking about, not to be explicit, but he's talking about taking her virginity, talking about whether or not they were going to use protection, snipping, fighting with her like children. This is an adult who's a police officer, who was supposed to be someone she looked up to. So really, really, and Lauren, you sent this to me at 7. So we just got through this thing and we're kind of reacting to this in real time. I know everybody loves reaction videos. This is straight up a reaction video.
This is literally straight up. I just had to make my screen a little bit bigger. And then Taryn, I totally agree with you. And I don't know if people can kind of see this. I want to go to some of the text messages. And don't you feel, I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but when you read these, don't you just feel super intrusive? It's almost like I feel guilty almost reading this. Like
you feel intrusive, but it makes the case that much more credible. There's no better way to say it than it was said between them. So you say to yourself, like, what do we gain by getting into the sordid details of the communications between Farwell and Birchmore? I'll tell you what, it's the vivid truth. It's the reality of what was going on. She actually says the date he took her virginity and the year and puts her at that age, puts her there. I mean, that's exhibit A in this case. There. How do you not? I mean, that's absolutely going right in the affidavit. It should have been pulled out in the summations that have been provided by the media accounts, but everyone is literally digesting this in real time right now.
Right. No, it's crazy. I mean, here's part of the text messages that you can see, and it's just like I don't really.
It was April 10th, 2013.
Yeah.
The day so the claim is Sandra is writing back to him talking about him taking her virginity, gives her the date. And I think somewhere down there it's noted it's just a few days before the Boston Marathon bombing, another significant event that dates this particular incident and ages Sandra. I mean, that she was 15 years old on that date. And that's why. And again, that
she said she was scared in these text messages. She literally said she was scared. She is a child, like that she got me with that.
Lauren, here's the other thing. Those text messages were the motive for murder. So they're proof of this illicit relationship. And Sandra was holding them over Matthew's head. All right, she's a child. She's been manipulated. She's been abused. Now she's trying to hold on to this Matthew who was manipulating her. She is holding this information over his head.
Well, her friend called the department. You know that. Her friend called the department.
He or she did. But there is much more discussion as you go deeper into the affidavit that essentially Sandra was saying to him, I want to have your baby. We have a deal. The contract is we're going to have a baby together. Okay. And then they talk about how many times they're going to try and this and that. Okay. And the tone is otherwise she's going to release this information to either his wife or his employer. That's the tone of this. And that's certainly how Farwell took it and why she had him, at her mercy in his mind, which led to the murder. So those texts are evidence against Matthew for this relationship. They're evidence against him for having sex while he was on duty. They're evidence against him for murder and motive for murder. So really, really powerful stuff.
I mean, you're right. This is literally, they have, if they have anything right here, they have motive 100%. I'm curious as to when we're going to see something happen with Robert Devine or Matthew Farwell's brother, William. I just feel like things are going to happen quickly. I'm thrilled that this happened. I just wasn't expecting it to happen. I mean, I don't know when I thought it was going to, but like, this is really good news. I was just so relieved to hear this today.
Yeah. And I think they make a hell of a case. That affidavit is thorough. Yeah. It's and the evidence compounds. It just builds on one another. It's like if he was having sex with Sandra, it was while he was working. They were communicating illicitly through text and he was getting paid. There's a wire transfer charge in there. I mean, it's just stacking up on him. Yeah. And all of the things we pointed out that did not make sense and others pointed out, certainly our viewers were pointing out, him wearing a mask in and out of the house. He was somebody known not to wear a mask. That's in there. The fact that her cell phone data, her cell phone movements at the time, the final movements are consistent with what we said. He kills her, then props her body up, pulls it, and can't hang her from the ceiling. So puts her in this kneeling type position. And that again helped investigators determine that she did not kill herself. The damage internally was not consistent with a kneeling or seated hanging. So again, we had discussed when we discussed this last time, That is suspicious. It's the easiest way for him to stage her suicide at that point. Also says he stared into the closet on a visit, which is really, I don't know if you caught this, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about it because I'm literally reacting to this. But he went from being angry with her, refusing to see her, to inuring himself back to her, being nice, asking for a key to her apartment, gets a copy of the key, doesn't tell her, returns the key he gave her. She notes at one point he was staring into her closet, and he's looking for either hanging points or things that he could use. And again, this is all showing that he was getting more desperate and acted out on that night.
Do you think, and this is based on Dr. Bodden's reports, do you think that he strangled her with his bare hands based on what Dr. Bodden reported about her neck and the positions that the ligature marks were in and whatnot?
Well, Bodden and Smock both say it's consistent with a strangulation like that, a manual strangulation, I believe.
Hands,
so the damage to the hyoid bone at a minimum. Here's what Smock said. And again, I read it quick, but he said that it's not a full weight. It's not consistent with a full weight or partial weight fracture to the hyoid bone. So basically it's saying it's more consistent with a strangulation type situation. Her full body weight was not on that particular point, the way she was positioned, which would suggest she moved.
Yeah.
And she would have had been dead to move. So he's saying her full body weight or a manual strangulation is the only thing that could cause that type of fracture in the direction it was in. So again, not consistent with what was found there.
I guess I'm just thinking about the fact that she loved this man. She obviously lost her virginity to this man. She was having a baby with him. And you and I both know that strangling someone is about as personal as you can get with a murder. I mean, you're literally watching the life just completely leave this person's body. And it breaks my heart that if that happened to her, that he would do that to her. I mean, obviously everything else that he did to her was absolutely unspeakable, but this, to think that he is capable of this, a little girl that trusted him, became a woman and was just looking forward to her entire life and having a baby and becoming a mom. And he took all of that from her.
Well,
in addition to so much.
The other thing about strangulation, again, in the affidavit is this was something that he got a sexual high from. He would choke her during their sexual escapades. Yeah. There's talk of that. So again, she could have found herself in a situation where she believes this is a consensual, something tantamount to their sex. He starts to choke her. He takes her out at that point. God. Which is even, more manipulation, obviously. Look, the end result is the same. It's horrible. But I'm saying he even put that into, role play or whatever they were doing, the choking. And there's some really detailed accounts of that and a text exchange about that.
Yeah. No, it's bad. So if anyone, again, if you have a strong stomach and you haven't eaten, you can read this. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It truly is. But like I said, I'm just relieved that they actually arrested him. I'm so relieved.
Well, look, just what was out personally and publicly in this case, when we were looking at it, it was screaming for a charge. I mean, this guy, I looked at this, I'm like, this guy is getting away with this. Like, we're hoping that this day would come. And thrilled that it did.
And I think just with Massachusetts, and I think we were talking about this the other day, just off the record, but there's just been so many scandals. There was the commercial driver's license scandal where a group of
that's a new one.
Yeah, where police officers were literally getting bribes for just like signing off on these commercial driver's licenses. It's crazy. So I think, and then we've got the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe for lack of. And so I think, a lot of us were kind of like, all right, well, is this ever going to happen? And so, I think I was one of those people that's like, great. I am so thrilled that they arrested him. But we need to see Robert Devine and William Farwell also arrested.
Well, that may be coming. A couple of things. Now, Devine, I didn't see mentioned at all in there. And again, I skimmed it fast, and I did not see his brother mentioned in there.
No, I didn't.
So they're absent. So, and again, correct us if anybody's watching that read this more closely. I'm actually looking for it now. I don't see it. And, but it's a big document, and we're going to go back through it. And believe me, if we misspeak, I want to make sure we rectify it. But it is, again, it's hot off the press. So,
Yep. And I'm wondering, Jared, in a case like this, is he going to have to stay in jail until his trial if it's a murder like this?
So they make the case, if you look, it's a motion to detain him on this charge.
Right.
So he's going to have to sit. In Pennsylvania, homicide is a non-bailable offense. This is a federal charge. So all of the things, this motion to detain him, the nature of the couple of things. Number one, it's showing in that affidavit he has a proclivity for sex with young children. Because part of the fantasy, again, just kind of a trigger warning for people. Part of Farwell's fantasies included Birchmore pretending she was even younger than she was. She was 15. He would role play with her that she was like 13. She would role play. He would encourage to role play with her that this was a non-consensual rape situation. So those insatiable desires and downright dangerous sexual proclivities, I would say, justify keeping him incarcerated, plus the fact that he killed her, plus the fact that he lied about it, plus the fact that he was a cop. All of those things would go into my argument that he does not get bail, and he should not. And lied to the police.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, I agree with you. Clearly, I don't think he should be able to post bail. I think he is going to have a very hard time in jail and eventually in prison. Oh my gosh. I mean,
yeah, you don't want to go to jail as a pedophile and former cop. Not a great look.
Yeah. And Taryn asks, do you find it strange, all of the events that have unfolded over the past few days? Cannoni denied the motion to dismiss Karen's 2 charges, murder 2, and leaving the scene. And then, and I was going to go kind of out of order here, but I guess we can go into Karen Reed. Boy. Yeah. And the O'Keefe's filed a lawsuit, the civil suit. I mean, it is kind of interesting how this all happened. Now, I don't think anybody who's been following the Karen Reed murder trial was surprised that Cannoni denied these requests. I don't think anybody was surprised at that. But I had asked this, when I put this out on Twitter, I guess I was just concerned or confused as to why Lally or the state or the DA's office wouldn't just drop these 2 charges themselves if the jury did in fact go to them and say, we're 9-3 on manslaughter. Like, you could
wait a minute. Didn't we have, first of all, look, let's answer Taryn's question first. Do I find it odd? No. And I'll tell you, my experience is the FBI does things on their timetable. They're not going to listen to a state office when to drop an indictment. So it's a great point. It's probably, it's the end of the summer. You're going into Labor Day weekend. A lot of the writings of judges get dropped prior to a holiday like that. So you're going to have a week where you're going to see a lot of that stuff. So sometimes that's more about when these things happen. The other thing is you got to realize the Birchmore thing was probably kept, the state investigators were probably kept largely in the dark as far as when that was happening. So they build that wall for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes they don't trust one another. And in this particular situation, there may be some of that. Or they're just not in the business of picking up the phone and saying, hey, we're going to arrest so-and-so on this. It's a need to know basis. So I don't really think, Taryn, there was a coordinated effort to just drop a lot of law out of Boston and Massachusetts this week.
Yeah.
The question you asked, Lauren, as to why the DAs don't just drop those charges against Karen Reed, I answered this question to you before.
I don't remember what you said.
It's a dead cop. it's a dead cop. It's a political county. The DA has to be political. They believe it was not an acquittal. Some jurors believe their case, and they're taking another shot. They're never going to walk away from that charge. If the judge compels it, different story. They're going down swinging at a minimum. They're not walking away.
If you were prosecuting that case, what would you do? And I'm not talking about what you think they should do because of politics, whatever. As a reasonable person, why? I mean, especially, let's say that leave the O'Keefe family out of it, right? Let's just say, leave them out of it for right now. Think about that. You're trying to get a conviction here. It seems like that's your best chance for a conviction, no?
Well, I think so. But at the same time, if it was my case, so assuming you would have it from the beginning from the beginning of the investigation through, I don't think I would have experienced some of the issues they've experienced. Okay. I would have had the requisite experts and those kind of things. And I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking them, but if you're involved in these things from the beginning of the investigation through the case, obviously there's no such thing as a perfect investigation, but you have enough trial experience that you plan ahead of time. What I would do right now, I wouldn't walk away from it if it wasn't an acquittal. And again, this is just assuming all other things are equal. She was not acquitted. And jurors didn't buy. There were some jurors that did not buy what went on inside the house. The body was drug out. I believed always murder was an overreach in this case. So I wouldn't have charged it from the beginning.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have charged it from the beginning. But now they're kind of stuck. Now to go back, they'd be changing their theory of the case. I thought the fact that Karen Reed and O'Keefe's relationship was souring is a reach for intentional murder.
Yeah. I mean, totally. It was whatever. We don't need to get into it because again, I could go on forever at how stupid I thought that was.
But I wouldn't pull the charge now. I wouldn't pull it now. Just so you know.
Okay.
Why did I look fuzzy on you?
Yeah, I know you were a little fuzzy. I don't know why. Oh, you're a little better now. Gosh, Taryn, you're like our third host tonight. My gosh. You found it strange that the AG said we aren't discussing other cases. My office is currently investigating, meaning his office is involved in those cases that the media asked about. Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to pull parallels with Birchmore and Karen Reed. And yeah, I mean, I guess that is interesting, but who knows? I'm not going to speculate.
How can you not? I mean, I think they're legitimate questions. It's the same reporters, it's the same investigators. You're going to ask about other cases. Everybody asks like they're so thrown by a question about a case. Our office happens to be investigating, but today is Sandra's day, though. It should really be about that case.
That's so true. So true. It really is her day. That's a great point, Jarrett. And Tommy, they're only hung on lesser charges of count 2, not count 2. That's the key part Eugene talks about. Well, I guess I'm not following the lesser charges.
Tommy's saying there was an acquittal on the top. Oh, you're right. Tommy, you're right. I mean, that's what has been testified to. So what Tommy's saying is they were only hung on the lesser charge. So in response to what I'm saying, he's saying, hey, she was technically acquitted of those upper charges, of the higher charges. I guess. I mean, but technically she was not, and it may be an issue of the instructions.
Well,
now we're playing semantics here, but Tommy, you're right.
We go back to that. I always said, I feel like this was largely Judge Cannoni's fault here, because at first the jury slip was so confusing, and I'm pretty sure they had that for longer than they should have. They were deliberating with that form for maybe a day. I mean, and then she was not even going to change it. She was going to be totally fine with it until somebody probably schooled her butt and was like, yeah, no, you need to do something about this.
I think so. Considering what Tommy said, it kind of changes a little bit what I said. She was not acquitted, but if we were to believe those jurors, right, then technically she kind of was. So I would say this. That may, if they just pursued, and this is something we're thinking about, and the prosecutors may be thinking about, if they only pursued a reckless charge, they might not get in the text messages between them because it's not relevant to whether or not she was being reckless at that moment.
Interesting.
Okay. So they're expanding her level of culpability to say, Judge, we're also claiming this was an intentional act. So even if you don't buy what I just said, part of the consideration that goes into what is charged is what pieces of evidence can come in as you're trying to prove them, even if you're aiming for that lesser charge. So it's just worth thinking about.
Yeah. Okay. No, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, I thought it was pretty powerful when Alan Jackson, I think he said something like, cool, like keep it, but we're going to appeal immediately. And I don't know, that got somebody, thinking whoever, and she's like, oh, okay, here you go. Sorry.
That's always in the back of your mind, then. It's like, if we win this thing, we still have that huge issue out there. I've had similar type issues where, there was some question of whether or not a jury had acquitted someone, but unfortunately it went the other way against our office. So the judge actually interpreted it more strongly, and a person was acquitted on an upper charge and convicted on some lesser charges. So all of it, look, who knows? I mean, I'm just speculating. That case is a tough one. I don't love that case.
I'm pulling up the civil suit since we're talking about it. The O'Keefe family civil suit filed by Paul O'Keefe from, I believe this was 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? Gosh, the whole week is running together for me.
It was 2 days ago. Yep.
2 days ago. Okay. I'm going to make us a little bit smaller here. So yeah, this one was interesting to me. I mean, he's naming CF McCarthy's and the Waterfall Bar for over serving Karen allegedly. And I've seen a lot of compilations from content creators who have done a really great job of putting together just certain parts of the trial where certain witnesses state that Karen wasn't drunk. She didn't seem drunk. I think that something that had always kind of not confused me, but I wasn't necessarily sold on this, was her BAC when they tested it. I felt like during the trial, their quote unquote expert, the range was just so crazy. It was like, oh yeah, it could be this, or it could be triple this. And you're like, okay, what are we supposed to think here? So I think that is, that's a little weird to me, but I'm not surprised. I think that we all thought that some kind of civil suit was coming down the line from the O'Keefes. I just wasn't necessarily also expecting the bars to be included.
Well, look, when you sue, so that those types of actions, you bring everybody in, okay? And if you look, the plaintiff's lawyers did a really good job of quantifying the amount of drinks she had at bar 1 and bar 2, the time she left. So it's not so much focused on Karen Reed's BAC or speculating. It's basically focusing on the quantity of her drinks. They also point out that she left the first bar with a glass, with a drink in her jacket, like that it was just this stream of drinking. She had, how many drinks did they say she had at the first bar? Was it 5?
I think it was like 9, or they're saying, hold on, let me see. It says, okay, on January 28th, 2022, at or about 8:58 p.m., CF McCarthy served Reed an alcoholic beverage. Reed consumed said drink. CF McCarthy, through his agents, servants, employees, served alcoholic beverages to defendant Reed at or about 9:13 p.m., 9:20 p.m., 9:33 p.m., 9:57 p.m., 10:22 p.m., and 10:29 p.m. Reed consumed such drinks. I mean,
so, and then it also said she was already showing signs of intoxication. So again, the allegation is, despite the fact that she was showing signs of intoxication. Now, in the law, the traditional signs of intoxication are, I'm not saying Karen Reed was showing them at that point, slurred speech, glossy eyes, staggered gait. So if Karen Reed was showing any of those signs in the video clips and the documentation at that point, there is an obligation as a provider of alcohol to cut off a patron doing those things. She then goes to bar number 2, already exhibiting signs, and she served multiple drinks there.
Well,
so
yeah, I'm just reading through this just to give you like verbatim here. It says,
I have that.
Oh, you have, okay. Yeah, I'm on, I think it's number 19. It's during all relevant times at or before 10:29 p.m. on January 28th, defendant Reed showed signs of intoxication while at C.F. McCarthy's. I guess my question is, if all of these witnesses, literally all of them, said that she didn't show signs of intoxication, where is this coming from on this lawsuit? And
well,
I have a
you
lot of
would hope
questions.
if they're making that claim, there is someone that could substantiate the claim. Okay. Now, in this case, as you know, there's an answer for everything. Her BAC was based on 7 night drink, 95 pounds. She would have been licking the floor if she drank that much in 1.5.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm going to go through some of these questions, but that's also a good point. And then I'll just go to Tommy's other point here, which, hold on. Except 8 witnesses or however many said she was perfectly sober to drive. And then, but all the people testified she wasn't. Yeah, right. I said that. And then, okay, interesting. But did she drink them all? Did she go to the restroom? I've been with my husband who drank my drink while I was away. Yes, and maybe she was getting drinks for other people. I'm not sure. So just going back to that, she did walk into the waterfall carrying a drink. I mean, and I'm just going to say this doesn't make anything right here from this night, but like this whole group clearly had no problem drinking and driving. All of them, literally all of them talked about this. So it's like.
But the question isn't, so that's a good point, and that cuts both ways. Is this something people are either more tolerant than we would think or expect, or are these folks so into the bar scene, they're like, we know when somebody's bombed, she wasn't bombed. The problem is this, look, you're going to be asking if this was to go to trial, right?
Yeah.
I mean, here's how these things play out. The bars are insured by an insurance policy. You sue a bar with this kind of allegation, the insurance company hires lawyers, that takes over, and they weigh the risk of the case versus paying it out. That's it. All right. And if I'm letting people in on a little secret, McCarthy's aren't making the decision as to whether or not to pay on this claim. It's an insurance risk assessment. Okay. I see what I would expect this claim to have been made. And by being made, I mean, do I have expected this complaint to have been filed? Yes. Does that mean I think they can prove it in court? It's Karen Reed land. Good luck.
Yeah. And I want to pin Tommy's comment about this. He said, I've been dying to ask Jared about the civil suit. Bev blocked all phone records aside from what the feds produced. She blocked the DA and victims advocate from being called. Will she get in civil?
Bev blocked all phone records aside with the okay, so it's obviously going to be a different judge. So it's a different set of parties. It's a different theory. So Tom, the answer is possibly. Okay, they're not controlled by the ruling of Judge Bev in civil court. So there's the criminal court component, which is the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Now there's the civil component, which is the estate on behalf of the children of John O'Keefe versus the pubs and Karen Reed individually. So why she's in there individually is her text messages become relevant. So a judge who thinks those text messages can either show that she was intoxicated, go to the level of her intent, may rule they're admissible on the civil case.
Wow. This is never going to end. I just can't believe. I mean, this is like horrible. This is never going to end for anyone.
And we have another trial coming. Oh, God. It's a lot.
But so do you think, and this could be just completely silly, do you think that they filed this civil suit possibly thinking that another trial wouldn't happen? So they're like, we're going to do this because we're not really sure that this is definitely going to happen. What do you think about that?
You have to file a civil suit prior to the expiration of the statute of limitations. So there can be a claim made that all of the information cooked into the civil claims against the bars and against Karen Reed were known to the lawyers and the parties right now. So the time doesn't start ticking. In a matter of like Brittany Drexel, where the civil suit came many years later, Brittany's family didn't know what happened to her. They didn't know anything. It was a total mystery. Once they found out, the statute started ticking. So there is a time crunch to get the civil suit filed. They filed them in between the 2 criminal cases because there's no telling if the criminal case is going to happen on time. Round 2.
Right. So
is the bar
yeah.
lower? Okay, I see, Tom. When I'm here in my office,
You
I
can
could
see.
actually
Okay,
see
sorry.
the
Yeah. Okay, just
So
making
is
sure.
the bar lower for discovery in civil versus criminal? The standard's pretty much the same, Tom. And it's basically, is it relevant evidence you're seeking? Okay. Criminal, obviously, you have more power to get things like the FBI can subpoena certain cell phone data and other things that civil lawyers may not have. But the standards are basically the same. Is what you're asking for likely to lead to relevant, discoverable evidence? That's the standard. So, you likely get more because of the authority and the entities involved in a criminal case, but the standard always is what we're looking for likely to get us relevant, discoverable evidence? So,
Yeah.
I've had more luck in getting detailed cell phone data, location data, and things of that nature in the criminal realm personally. But I'm learning now that I'm a retired prosecutor how to do it even stronger in the civil realm. But really, FBI and having those folks with you goes a long way.
Yeah, and there's a question. I'll add this. It seems to be a bit general, but yeah, what does it take to get the FBI involved in order to get relevant evidence? So, I mean, I personally think I think it was just interesting with Karen Reed. A lot of the people that thought she was guilty, they kept saying, "Oh, the FBI is only investigating this because Karen's defense attorneys went and cried to them." And I'm just like, I don't think it works that way. I don't think that you can just go cry to the FBI and they're like, "Oh yeah, let me come sweep in." And
right, they have to have, so they don't get involved unless there's certain things that immediately trigger FBI involvement. Kidnapping, for example, is one of them. When a kidnapping becomes a murder, like that's one of those things you see in movies that's actually kind of true. But it all depends on what you mean by involvement. Does it mean they're going to take over the investigation? Like Delphi, for example, they were involved. I'm reading Susan Hendrick's book right now. Look at this plug. So I'm reading this book right now. So it's called Down the Hill by Susan Hendricks. Very good Delphi book, easy read. But the FBI was involved when Abby and Libby initially went missing. Once it became a murder, they peeled back. My cases with the FBI, I would often call upon a colleague in the FBI's office, and I would say, "Hey, Mike, hey, Joe, could you look at this for me?" So it all depends on what you mean by involvement. It goes that continuum goes from taking a case over to assisting investigators. Kohlberger, same thing. They use the CAS system from the FBI. They use certain technology from the FBI, but the FBI didn't bring those charges. Those are state charges against Brian Kohlberger, and the lead investigators are state investigators.
Got lots of questions tonight. I love this.
No, that's right. Trial Junkies United. Crossing state lines, yes. Being invited by local authorities, yes to both.
Yeah, love that. Well, I guess crossing state lines here. I don't know why this kind of reminds me or brings me to our next case, which is Nikki Cheng Saelee McCain, who is still missing. But I want to gently point out here that Nikki's case appears to be more of a recovery effort at this point than a rescue. I hope I'm wrong, Jarrett, but as of right now, things seem to be pointing in that direction. And I know that, Jarrett, you were the attorney for the Drexel family, Don Drexel, and we've discussed this on Primetime Crime. It might have been before we were live and we did this, on one of our earlier episodes, but that family waited a long time for justice and to find out what happened to their daughter, Brittany, where her body was buried, all these things. But, what does that entail? And what is Nikki's family at this point possibly going through with law enforcement, with their lawyers, if they have lawyers? I mean,
there's a moment where that transition occurs. I've actually been in the room when that occurs, where there's a come to Jesus moment where you're like, look, I've been on rescues where somebody's in the river where they're like, okay, this is no longer a recovery. It's a body recovery case. But in the Drexel case, I came after that fact, but I've been in the room where we said, we don't think so-and-so is alive. You know,
Mm.
with moms in particular, there's a connection between moms and their children. They know down deep, they know. It's weird. Like, I think sometimes they want us to be hopeful so they keep law enforcement working. I think there's like a desire, like, hey, they're holding out hope to keep us working. They're holding out hope because there is that small, you know, sliver that this person could come walking in the door. But the reality is, you know, and we're looking at Nikki's sisters last week. I mean, to have that conversation, we truly don't know 100%. Obviously, we hope things work out, but we have to remember Nikki was almost killed by Tyler in the case prior to her going missing. She believed, at least in an account that I read, he was too exhausted and stopped his torment of her on that particular occasion. Otherwise, would have killed her. I mean, so, you know, this isn't someone who vanished off the face of the earth out of nowhere. This is someone who was abused, was the victim of a very violent assault, and was also the key witness against that person. So, you know, those are all of those factors together, really more likely than not, you know, Nikki has met an end here. I mean, that's the reality of it. And it's sad. And you know, like Birchmore, we wait for answers.
Yeah. And I think with Nikki's case, you know, I do check in with Chloe and stuff, and I know they are just going through it. And you know, they are so strong, and they do appear just so together, so stoic, but you know, they're absolutely suffering tremendously inside. And I know that they reach out to Tyler. They talk to him, and I'm not going to share anything that Chloe has shared with me, except for just one thing that I think to be suspicious in terms of Tyler and the way that he kind of responded to her. And he refers to we, like, can we do anything? Let me know if we can help. And it's just like, why is it always a we, you know, which just leads me to believe that it's his family might possibly be involved. Again, this is speculation, but it's like, again, like, language matters, speech matters. And it's strange to me. And it kind of sets off my spidey senses. And Kathy, I pinned your comment about the dogs. I mean, I interviewed, and I speak to this girl, Julia. She's the canine captain, I believe, on Twitter. She is amazing. And she is sourced by families, or she volunteers and she goes to these crime scenes, and she has all these different types of dogs that she can bring, you know, cadaver dogs, or dogs that search, what's that? Yeah. Or search out technology, whatever. I mean, the police should have these, but there are also volunteers that do this type of stuff as well. I just don't think that the dogs, or a volunteer search dog, would be allowed on that property. I think it's just, as we discussed in the past, it's just law enforcement that is allowed. But let me see. Just remember, in Nikki's case, the person responsible had 4 days to cover their tracks. They had a head start. Yeah, I mean,
I think Nikki's sisters are being extraordinarily strong for the kids. You know how that goes. Everybody's like, everything's fine. We're going to be okay. Just like, to this day, if I tell my mother something's wrong, she's immediately telling me it's okay. I'm like, Mom, I get it. It's like, so I think they're being strong for the children. Not to say they aren't strong. They are strong women. I'm not saying that, but there's kids involved here, and they're Tyler's kids too. So it's a real unique situation. It's a unique dynamic. They have to be very careful about what they say, how they say it. So it's tough. And the question of how to get the FBI involved there, again, it's that same thing. Does local law enforcement seek their help? Is local law enforcement moving in a direction that they feel like they have the answers, although it's taking some time? You know, FBI could be assisting them, you know, in the background. We don't know. But if they don't ask for it, and it doesn't fit into one of those unique situations where the FBI has original and exclusive jurisdiction, they do have to be invited in.
Sure. And something that I want to bring up, I did speak to someone in law enforcement that's not Shasta County, but they made a good point. Everybody is extremely frustrated that Tyler gets arrested, released, arrested, released. Well, he's like, this means they're keeping tabs on him. They're letting him know
Right.
that they are watching him. They are seeing him. So yeah, sure, he's released today, but most likely not tomorrow. And I mean, tomorrow is I don't know, I'm not saying tomorrow literally, but you get what I mean. But no, in the Facebook group, there was a comment from somebody who said something like, I was skeptical that Shasta County was doing everything that they possibly could. And now I am certain that they are. And they believe, and I also believe this, and speaking to some of my sources on the ground, that they're close. I think they're really close, you guys. I mean, I hope and I pray, but everything is pointing to the fact that they are making a lot of effort and are putting in a lot of effort, and they're making a lot of progress here, as well as the fact that the tip line, especially the anonymous one that Brian Fitzgibbons and his group put out, they're getting a ton of tips, a ton. So
yeah, I think this case is extremely active and moving quite forward. And the cops are messing with Tyler. I mean, pulling him over all the time. I mean, come on, that's what they did with the John Wayne Gacy and a lot of people. They're messing with him.
Yeah. A forfeiture. Interesting. Jarrett.
How about a forfeiture for wrongdoing doctrine? In Nikki's case, I'm not sure. Kathleen, I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I certainly know what forfeiture is, but we don't have a wrongdoing doctrine in Pennsylvania.
Is that pertaining to how he beat her, or?
Let's see. Is Kathleen?
All right.
We'll
wait for you. Yeah.
I'm just not familiar with the terminology. I'm sure. I hope I know something about it.
Yeah. No. But no. So that I did want to. It says evidence code. I don't know that, Jarrett.
California Evidence Code 1390. Hang on.
Okay, he's looking it up.
So
you would think the sheriff's testimony would work in place of Nikki's if she isn't there to testify. Well, I mean, I think it's the whole everybody deserves to face their abuser in court. I think that's the law. And Kathleen says if they can prove he had wrongdoing involved in procuring her absence, he waives his Sixth Amendment rights to confront his wife.
Okay, so that would mean the evidence. Okay, great, Kathleen. Nice explanation. You could teach in law school. So
I know, right, Kathleen?
He loses the ability to object on the grounds of hearsay, or the fact that he cannot confront if Nikki is missing and determined to be dead or never found. Okay, can the charges ultimately be brought against him? There is a Sixth Amendment argument that says if we could show Tyler absented Nikki from the jurisdiction, he loses the right to confront her as a witness, and that testimony comes in. Traditionally, it wouldn't come in because it violates the Sixth Amendment. It violates the Confrontation Clause. If you're coming to sit on the witness stand to say the light was red, it wasn't green, I have a right to confront you. Okay. If I got rid of you or absented you from a jurisdiction, I forfeit that right under that rule. So yes, I think we're not there yet though, Kathleen. I mean, we have to figure out that in order to do that, there has to be evidence to support that Tyler or someone absented Nikki from the jurisdiction. So good question.
Yeah, that's interesting. Witness tampering. Is that a thing in a case like this? I mean, I guess they can't really prove it, because if they could, he would be arrested, right?
Well,
again,
if you watched our last episode, there's some indication that there was some of that going on from people very close to the case. So
well,
it's hard to say. And again, but witness tampering obviously is close to what Kathleen asked about too. I mean, if you are paying off witnesses, if you're causing them to be unavailable, if you're harming witnesses or threatening to harm witnesses, all of those things certainly factor into you could be charged for that conduct, and you could end up waiving your Sixth Amendment right to confront a witness if you, in fact, took it that far.
I wonder if the Chloe or Kay can show them the text message where Tyler says, I just want to pay her to drop the charges. And if that can result in yet another arrest. I mean, honestly, just keep piling them on, right? Until he finally goes down. Allegedly. Jarrett, keep me in check here, okay? So I don't.
I give up.
Stop. No, I haven't said anything.
Of course, it's alleged. Of course.
No, but you know what I mean. Just keep me in check for whatever I'm saying. Yeah. So that's pretty much where Nikki's case is at. I firmly believe that Shasta County, the sheriff's office, is doing everything they possibly can. And, Jarrett and I speak to Brian all the time. I bother him so much. And just knowing that USPA is involved and they care, they just give a crap, it also just makes me feel a lot better. But I like the idea of the dogs. I'm just not sure exactly where they would be able to search just because of the tribal stuff. So that's just the hard part in a lot of this, because there could be volunteers out there searching, like with Sebastian Rogers. I mean, that was amazing how many people turned up to search for him. This, you just can't do that.
Right. I mean, well, certainly in the area, there are certain areas they don't have access to. So it creates a real problem.
Yeah. And Taryn, I saw this today, the new poster for Sebastian. I mean, I was like, wait, we're just now seeing Sebastian with a different pair of glasses now after all this time. That kind of annoyed me a little bit. I don't know if anyone else saw this poster, and the fact that the FBI now put out a reward for Sebastian Rogers, a $50,000 reward. They also said, he has ties to this place, which I believe was Clarksville, Tennessee. That's where his father lives. I mean, it's like, what? Now, 6 months later, we're getting like actually good info. And this reminded me of, I don't know if anyone who's following Sebastian's case, Katie Proudfoot, his mother, did an interview with On Patrol Live. And this was probably 2 months after Sebastian went missing. And that interview that she gave, and this was after she did so many other interviews, that interview was the most helpful. It was like, she finally told us, this is how he behaves. This is what he likes. So she finally gave us information that we needed. And I'm like, why is this happening 2 months later? Why is this so backwards? But yeah, that's my feelings about the poster. They're great, just a little bit late, if you get my drift. So, yes. And then clearly Bullhorn Betty, the YouTuber who was arrested at the vigil, I don't even know where to begin with all of that drama. I try to not pay attention, but sometimes it's hard because it's just so crazy. But yeah, really, really crazy. So, let's go into the other case that Jarrett and I have been covering, and we do a lot of updates on the court filings because the court filings are coming in very frequently. And this is the case of Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelley out of the Oklahoma and Kansas area. These two mothers whose lives were taken allegedly by 5 perpetrators. Veronica's mother-in-law, or, her and her ex were never actually married, but for all intents and purposes, her mother-in-law. But essentially what's coming next at this point is arguments from the perpetrators' attorneys on whether or not the 5 suspects should be tried together. So that is coming up in September. September 18th, I believe, is when the judge has to make a decision, and the arguments or the motions are due, I think, by the 9th. But at this point, I mean, we and Jarrett and I discussed this in our last little mini episode about this case. I mean, it's crazy. I was kind of just like, wow, you really could build a school or a hospital with the money they might use for these 5 different trials. And you were like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. They need to get this right, which was a great point. But what do you think the odds are here that they will be tried together? 5 suspects.
It all comes down to their defenses. If their defenses are antagonistic and they're pointing the finger at each other, then the likelihood of them being tried together really diminishes. If they are lock, stock, and barrel and have joint defenses, then they can be tried together. So it's really going to be dictated by the positions they take. The argument on the DA side is judicial economy, convenience, understanding of the case, and the argument of resources. I mean, these are huge presentations. This is a big case if you have one defendant. If you have five, it's, you have the Twombleys, Tiffany Adams, Tad McCollum, and Paul Grice. That's five. It takes a lot just to name those guys, let alone. I know. 5 people. Each team's going to have 2 to 3 lawyers. That's 15 lawyers in the room on the defense side. Let's say the DAs have 4 lawyers. That's 19 lawyers litigating this case. 1 judge, several clerks, God only knows how many investigators. I mean, just the teams alone are going to fill that courtroom. Does not mean they shouldn't be tried together based on that fact alone. But the hope is, as a prosecutor, you do not want to do these things 5 times. And I've said it before. Every time we talk about this case, I'd be like, I would be trying to cut a deal with one of them.
Yeah. And you brought up some points on our mini episode. It seems like specifically Cora's attorney is really pushing to have all of the custody files unsealed, so they can sort of make this case like this is all Tiffany, perhaps. But it looks like a judge ruled that is going to be possible and rules against Tiffany. So, it's going to be something. And it seems so far, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they are kind of turning against each other here.
If you kind of read in between the lines here, it looks like Cora Twombly's lawyers want those records. You and I are kind of speculating that in those records is what is rumored to be the intent for this act to begin with. So there is evidence that there were allegations and claims made that Tiffany Adams may have used to entice her co-conspirators to aid her in this murder. So Cora Twombly's lawyers are really papering it up. They're the ones who filed the motions first, and all the other defendants kind of reap the benefits of this request because now everybody has those sealed records. That was in the last proceeding. They're like, everybody's got to get their hands. Everybody's all got to be shared between everyone. So they've been unsealed, and each defendant now has them. So my thought is, if Twombly's lawyers want to use that as some kind of a claim that this is why their client acted the way she did based on representations of Tiffany, then there's a crack in the conspiracy because they're going to be saying there was manipulation here. There was a perceived justification for murder. But again, it's not wild speculation because we know some people involved in this thing, but we're taking some liberties with that because it hasn't been directly set forth in the filings.
Well, I want to also, I'm just thinking again out loud. I mean, and I know that in some of these filings, there are accusations made about Tiffany's character from Veronica, from Tiffany's own son. I mean, and these, let me be clear. I obtained these documents perfectly legally when they were unsealed. I got them, saved them. And this was right when the women went missing. And that's when a lot of sleuths were like, what's going on? Let me find motive, And so there are a lot of mentions of the way Tiffany behaved. Again, allegedly. I want to make sure she has a fair trial so we don't ever have to do this again for these effing families, But I think that could say a lot, right? If it's on paper and it's coming from someone else that's not the Twombleys, and it's not Tad or whoever, it's coming, from other people that she was quote unquote violent, manipulative, and she did X, Y, Z. Do you agree with that? Could that be?
Yeah, but again, I think it's going to fall on deaf ears in front of a jury. I think ultimately these folks, first of all, you have to admit to doing this. So they'd say, we did it, but we believe we were justified in doing this. And the jury is going to look at that and say, okay, you believe you could take the law into your own hands. And by the way, what about Jillian? She had nothing to do with those filings. So all of a sudden, it's like, take out Tiffany and throw Jillian, an innocent victim, in there too. Now, Jillian was involved because she was an approved supervisor of the visits. But the reality is, like, even if what we're speculating is true, you run into what I'll call the Jillian problem. She certainly wasn't abusing the children or claimed to have been abusing children. She certainly wasn't allowing for that to happen, or anything like that. So how do you explain that? How do you justify that killing?
Well, do you know what Tiffany said, according to the Twombly's daughter, is that Jillian is guilty because she supports Veronica. That was literally what it said in the affidavit, not verbatim, but something along those lines, which is
so that would be the argument they make. So if she's guilty by association, you're brought into this justification argument, but I just don't. It's not going to carry the day. Doesn't mean they can't try. Doesn't mean the lawyers can't investigate it, which at this stage is really all they're doing.
So we don't know, Jarrett, like what exactly each of their defense is going to be. And I'm so curious about this. And something that I've thought about, completely speculating, is, are they, any of them, going to admit to any drug use and maybe say, oh, I was under the influence? And if so, does that help? Will that help? And were you
under the influence when they planned the Anvil hit in February? It's like, were you under the, like, if you look back in this case, it's like, how long are you under the influence? Months? Like,
well, yeah, but I'm saying
under the influence could negate a first-degree intentional murder down to a malicious murder. Like in Pennsylvania, it's first degree, can go down to third degree. If you are so intoxicated, you can't appreciate what you're doing. Okay. If you're conspiring for months with 4 other people, good luck making a claim like, I was bombed for 4 months. I had no idea what I was doing for 4 months and then did this. It's not going to work.
Sorry, I guess I mean like using. Not under, I don't know if that's the same thing, but it's almost like.
So you just mean in the throes of addiction versus intoxicated. No, I mean, it's, even if it was true, it doesn't necessarily negate the level of intent. It just won't, that does not excuse in the law someone's ability to plan, conspire, and carry out a murder. If they were intoxicated to a point where they could not appreciate the nature of what they were doing, that's a different story.
Got it. Okay, so they can't be, and again, this is pure speculation, they can't be in their jail cell right now, maybe detoxing, coming down from this and going, oh my gosh, what have I done? I was under the influence of methamphetamine for however long. I wish I didn't do that. I need this to be my defense. I was under the influence. I was using. That's not going to work.
It's not to say it could never work. In this case, looking at the length of time and the nature of their relationships and the length of this conspiracy, I do not see that working.
You don't? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I saw Tad filed, I think I sent this to you, the medical affidavit or the medical motion. And I was kind of thinking about this and I'm like, what's wrong with him? Like, could this be a detox thing if some of them were using? I don't know. It's interesting.
But Lauren, they've been in jail for months at this point. So at that point, if he
filed one before too. He filed one
before.
So
if you have delirium, and I've seen this, I've been a part of committees that look at these things in jails. It's like, that is no picnic. I mean, it's no joke. People really suffer. But if you look at the timeline, this appears to be a chronic and pain condition. They don't specify, which is a little curious to me, what his condition is, just that he's not being treated by an actual physician for an unspecified. So it sounds like McCollum has a chronic pain condition.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
don't know. And this is Ron. Hi, welcome. I believe that there are some things going on and I don't necessarily want to get into it because I don't have proof and I don't want to say anything without having proof, but I hear you. I completely hear you. And it seems to be very much a small town thing where a lot of people still don't want to speak because they're nervous and because they believe, certain people believe that some of the associates of these 5 are still out there. And they are, of course. I mean, I'm sure these people had friends they hung out with. I think we saw some names in the original affidavit. And yeah, so I completely get it. I completely get it. And like I said, Jarrett and we're gonna stay on top of this case as everything gets filed. And my gosh, I think it's gonna be huge come September when we finally know what's going to happen with these trials. I'm extremely anxious.
Hopefully, allegedly, we're going to know in September. We'll see.
You think maybe longer?
I don't know. Nothing ever goes off on time. Nothing ever happens on time when the cases are this big.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh. And we didn't have this on the docket, but people know that I cover this a lot. I'm so annoyed that the Keefe case for the murder of Tupac Shakur is not going to happen until March now. It's literally, I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. And if anyone paid attention to what happened yesterday in court, Keefe D literally told the judge out of nowhere that the prosecutors ordered the correctional officers to come and beat the shit out of him, which I was like, whoa. And the judge was like, whoa, cool. Why am I hearing about this now? You can have your attorney, file something and we can discuss this later. And he's like, yeah, he's just like, if I get punched and if I start bleeding, I could die because I'm on blood thinners. And she's like, okay, cool. I don't know.
Yeah, he's pretty articulate in court. He's pretty animated. So
they're so good at manipulating, Jarrett, and you know this obviously better than anyone. These guys, their personalities allow for me to watch him and say, oh, well, he's kind of like an old man. And then I'm like, no, stop. I'm like, don't,
I've been impressed on, multiple occasions where these folks know the system. I mean, Keefe D knows the system. Tiffany Adams, and these are no strangers to the court system. They know what needs to be said. They're as comfortable in those worlds as most people are in their jobs. They don't necessarily respect authority. They're not afraid of the DAs or the police officers. They're not intimidated. They come in, they state their claim, they talk to other inmates, they learn the language. They know exactly what they need to say to get new lawyers, to get things continued. It's just the way the world works. And I've been impressed many times. I'm like, damn, that guy could be a Philadelphia lawyer.
Yeah, well, and you said this the other day, I think. I don't know if we were, I'm going to confuse if we're on the air, if we're talking off the air. But with the 5 accused of murdering Veronica and Jillian, you think that they're probably talking in jail. Like, you think
I would check if they were talking. They're either talking through a conduit or talking about each other or finding a way to communicate to one another. That's a very small facility they're in. Yeah. So I would be, as I'm sure they are, keenly listening to the recorded visit calls and things of that nature, looking for any indicate, because they're not supposed to be communicating. They're supposed to be segregated.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I think, Ron, I remember reading when this case first broke that Tiffany was also the chair of the GOP in Cimarron County or something like that. And she was super involved in a lot of things in Cimarron County, which, yeah, it's terrifying. Disney, it's because they're used to, yeah, they're definitely not going to talk their way out of it. None of these guys are going to. I firmly believe, Keefe D's case is a different beast, but with these 5 in Oklahoma,
they've talked their way into it. There's claims they've admitted to this. So
right, exactly. I think it's going to be at this point just about keeping their lives. These 5, don't you, Jarrett? Or am I
again first one to the table to make a deal? I go right to those Twombly's, or I would say, look, I told you what I'd say. Your daughter is going to be having to testify against you. We could save you that trouble. Do the right thing. Testify against Tiffany and Tad and Paul, or I go to Paul, and vice versa. All of a sudden, you have one less case to deal with. Split the conspiracy, go at them. Hopefully, we only have to do maybe 2 trials.
Right. And you made a good point for anyone who didn't hear that. I feel like you said that quietly, but their daughter will have to testify, Cora and Cole's daughter. And that's horrible. So save your daughter. The heartache and the stress. My gosh, it's horrible.
And the trauma.
Exactly. And no, Taryn, God, we got through an episode without bringing up Sarah Boone until now. But yeah, she's also asking for special privileges, and God, that is a total mess. But Jarrett and I should cover Sarah Boone. We haven't done that, or I haven't done it with him. I've done it with other people. But Tommy, this is funny. My guilty pleasure is listening to these wackos jail calls while working at night when no live streams are on. Oh my!
There's nothing like it. It's like visiting every fine art museum in New York.
Jarrett, you said you used to listen to them on your runs. How wacky!
Well, one in particular, the biggest case of my career, I would listen to his visits and try to get inside his head, So, yeah, it was wild.
That's how you relax. Go for a run. Listen to some Hugo Zelensky jailhouse phone calls, right? So relaxing. My gosh, so relaxing. I just want to get to some of the comments before we agree with the 5. But also, okay, listen, Disney, I hope he is convicted. I just think it's going to be harder than we think. That's all.
Who, Keefe D?
I think it is. So we have to go off of just like his interviews on Vlad TV. No murder weapon. Everybody's dead. No, I guess the hotel records of his wife can put him there technically, but yeah, I'm just saying, I think it's going to be harder than. Don't commit a crime. Okay. These are funny. You guys are so funny in the chat. I love these. How early is the media able to request jailhouse calls on this case? I think you mean the case of the Kansas moms. Gosh, I don't know. Jarrett, it's obviously state by state, but do you happen to know anything, a general rule on that?
It is. I mean, so essentially they would be FOIA requests. I don't know.
What Tommy said. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were really uptight about that kind of stuff in Pennsylvania. We're pretty tough on it because, look, they're ongoing cases, and what's being said there, and other states are a lot more loose with that stuff. So it is a state by state issue.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, there's a gag order on this case when it comes to law enforcement and obviously the attorneys. So I wonder if I'd be able to FOIA any of those calls. I mean, I can try.
You can try. I don't know if you're going to get them.
I'll literally always try. And can someone tell me when they're going to stop showing the YSL trial? Dude, I don't know. When little
on the 2-year anniversary.
What's that?
On the 2-year anniversary, they're going to shut it down.
My God, I know. No, I totally agree with you. I just love Lil Woody. I think he's entertaining, but I'm also like, is he bad? He could be bad. And Disney, you definitely missed the first 30 minutes. Yes, we did talk about Reed and we talked about Sandra Birchmore. So definitely go back and have a listen because we got into some details about the civil suit. There is a group that gets jailhouse calls. Oh, do you mean like a Facebook group or a media group or that I should join? Because I'm all about joining these groups. So let me know. Okay, well, I think that's all I have for tonight. Jarrett?
I think it's been a long 2 days. So 2 days ago, we were out in New York. We got to the premiere of True Crime News, which is a new daily show hosted by Ana Garcia. So Lauren and I went out to the premiere and invited ourselves onto the show. So I'm sure, I'm hoping in addition to Dan Abrams and Nancy Grace, we get to go on True Crime News, which would be fun. But and we have some stuff coming up, some exciting stuff coming up that we're 99.9% there, and TV stuff, which I love. So looking forward to it. We're filming one tomorrow, which we can't get into, but I get to skip work in the morning and go film a show. So I'm looking forward to that.
You're skipping work. You're playing hooky. I mean, I'd say
this is work. It doesn't look like work to some people.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's a lot of work. Definitely a lot of work. And I'm going up to the White Mountains with my kids and my family. So gosh, I hope I get service. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I do not do well without service or Wi-Fi or internet. So Yeah, and
I'm
Tommy,
sure they have towers up there. So
Tommy, I am gonna go for it. Don't you worry. So I will let you guys know. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, if you are joining us for the first time, I feel weird saying this, but can you like or subscribe to this channel? You know, we're trying to grow it, and again, I feel weird saying that, but like and subscribe, okay?
well, it's free. It's not like we're asking for money.
Yeah, no, it's not. I don't know. You know what I mean. I just feel like a douche, but anyway. All right. Thank you guys for watching. You know where to find us. Hit us up again if you have any cases that you want to see covered. But gosh, I feel like with all the cases we're covering, we have enough to continue to give everybody updates on them. So yeah. Okay.
All right. Good night. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Jarrett.
Thank
Bye.
you.